Well, thank you very much for joining us, everyone, this morning. My name is Mark Copestake. I'm the Director of Enrollment Management and Financial Aid at the Latin School of Chicago. Thank you for joining this information session for families interested in applying to senior kindergarten through 4th grade. While we wish we really could be with you in person this morning, we have a really exciting program. In just a few moments, you'll hear from our Assistant Head of School, Shelley Greenwood, followed by the Director of our lowest school, Julie Brooks, and then we'll close with a Q&A where you can ask any questions that you may have. Thank you to all those of you who've submitted questions ahead of time, but please also feel free to drop any questions into the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen throughout this morning's program. As a reminder, you'll find a wealth of information about our program, plus full details about the application process on the admissions pages of our website at www.latinschool.org/admissions. For entry this fall, the deadline to apply for any grades SK through 4 and to submit all of the supporting documentation is April 9th. That being said, we'd encourage you to complete your applications before this date as we begin to become aware of any spaces available following re-enrollment in February. Now, SK through 4 are traditionally non-entry point grades for us at Latin, and admission will depend on whether we experience any attrition, and normally this will result in a handful of spots per grade. If any spaces open up, we'll invite selected families in for a parent conference and a child assessment this spring. This will hopefully be in person, but if there's significant reason that prevents your family from participating in an in-person assessment or conference, a virtual option may be available. My colleague Anessa Starb, Associate Director of Enrollment Management for the lowest school, oversees the lowest school application process. She'll be facilitating this morning's Q&A session, and you'll meet Anessa if you're invited in for an assessment or a parent conference this spring. Following this morning's session, please don't hesitate to reach out to Anessa with any questions that you have about Latin or the application process. Anessa has just gone ahead and listed her email at the bottom of the screen. Now, unfortunately, Latin's head of school, Mr. Randall Dunn, cannot be with us this morning due to a family bereavement, but I'd encourage you to check out his video on Latin's website. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce Latin's Assistant Head of School, Shelley Greenwood, who would like to share a few words.
Thank you so much, Mark, Anessa, everyone. It's my pleasure to tell you a little bit about the Latin School this morning, and I have great notes from my boss, Mr. Randall Dunn. So if you see my eyes divert to the notes occasionally, know that I just want to make sure that I don't miss any of the great things that he would be sharing with you today. This is year 29 for me at the Latin School. It's been a pleasure to work closely since day one with the Office of Enrollment Management and Financial Aid. And I can't say enough about the good hands that you are all in as far as our team. Just echo Mark's comments. Reach out if there's anything we can do to help you with the process, to answer your questions, to support you and your children in any way. So, I hope you've done a lot of exploring about what Latin is like when it's not in a pandemic. And I encourage you to do what Randall and Mark suggest. Go to the website, wealth of information there so that you can get the look and the feel of the place. Relationships matter for us. They are the way that we manage our connection with you as a family, and it says a lot about our culture. So we want you to know how important that is. Today, I'm going to talk about the things that I think you're really going to want to know. And frankly, they're things that I would want to know if I was a parent. How are we managing through and beyond this pandemic? And what are we doing to address concerns about diversity, equity, and inclusion? We wanted to lean into those right at the beginning of this conversation so that you had clarity and understanding about how we are working around both of these issues. First, I'd like to talk about the school during a pandemic. There is no question that this is one of the most complicated set of circumstances we have ever faced as educators. Just put it that simply. Not only is everything new, but everything continues to be new every couple of weeks or so, and in some cases, every couple of days or so. So the word of the year is pivot, right? We are pivoting weekly, daily, minute by minute. You'll hear from Julie Brooks later. Nobody has pivoted more often than our director of the lower school. Everything we relied on before is no longer stable. But you should know that for Latin, these aren't always exactly new circumstances. We've actually been redefining educational excellence for more than 130 years. To continually change and to innovate is actually a part of our DNA. Of course, we prefer not to do it as much as we have been and to do it on our own timeline, but the pandemic for all schools has been an exercise in extreme innovation. Here's what it's forced us to do. It's forced us to examine how we teach, what we teach, and maybe even more importantly, how our students learn best. At Latin, we talk about creating the conditions for excellent learning. We know that when students feel well physically and emotionally, when they are engaged, and when they truly feel included, they will learn best. The conditions Latin creates is also what makes this school so unique. Our teachers seek to know our students as individuals. Our curriculum is diverse and rich. Our support structure is comprehensive. These are the things that we are protecting right now during the pandemic. These are the things that cannot and will not change, even if how they are delivered evolves, and they certainly have been evolving. Speaking of evolution, when we launched a new vision statement last year, we were very intentional about including the word inclusive as a critical element of the learning experience at Latin. So often DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion work, is treated as a separate entity, and we wanted to make sure that it was integral to our daily work at school. Our strategic plan uses the term LEAD. That stands for learning, engaging, advancing, and developing our school. The events of the last few months made this work more urgent than ever. We needed to be honest with ourselves about why things like survivors of Latin can happen, and we needed to do things differently. We needed to define our work more specifically. So we engaged in a process for input. We started, as many schools have, by listening. We responded to hundreds of emails, had phone calls with people to hear their thoughts. We connected with our students from the Demanding Accountability Group. We worked very closely with our educational consultant and diversity consultant, Dr. Derek Gay, to hear about the results of our inclusion survey. We have diversity, equity, and inclusion coordinators who work very closely with our director of diversity, equity, and inclusion to hear about how we can be better partners in their work. And we combined input from these sources, and 5 themes clearly emerged. And I think I want to take a moment here just to let you know that this was comprehensive across our community. From our youngest students to our board of trustees, we leaned into this work. And when we mentioned the term DNA before, it's not said lightly. This is what we do. When we see something at Latin that is not going well, when we see something at Latin that we need to change, we link arms, we lean into the work, and we get after it. So here are the themes that emerged that have now given us the foundation for our goals around our work with diversity, equity, and inclusion. The themes are representation, accountability, inclusion, professional development and education, and curriculum. The next steps for us will be to identify how we measure our progress on these goals. I hope that gives you a glimpse of what is front and center for Latin right now. I encourage you to look for evidence of these things as you explore our school. And I want to thank you again for being here. It's now my pleasure to introduce and turn the mic over to our director of the lower school, Julie Brooks.
Thank you, Shelley. That was fantastic. I got excited listening to you. Thank you so much for such a great view of Latin as a comprehensive place. I will echo Mark and Shelley in welcoming all of you here today. And yes, we much prefer to see your faces in person and be able to engage with you directly, but this is one of the things we have learned to do in this world of pivoting is to hold our information sessions in a safe way. So this morning, I am going to do my very best to paint the picture of life in lower school in about 10 to 15 minutes or less, and give you that snapshot of what our world looks like based on all the things that Shelley has shared with you. One of the things Shelley said that is so important to all of us is the relationships with students, relationships with families, the relationships amongst colleagues. Those are the foundational piece. Without those, we truly don't learn at our very best. We can go through the motions, we can put the skills in place, but we do not have the foundation on which we would like to learn. So what that looks like in lower school, we believe in a responsive school, we're responding to the needs of our students. We talk about safety a lot, especially in the world that we live in. And we know physical safety is of paramount importance, but it equally as important is that social emotional safety, cognitive safety for all, that students can take a risk, they can make a mistake, they can throw out a wild and crazy idea and know that it's going to be taken seriously. Those are essential to learning. When we are safe and we feel a sense of belonging and a part of the community, our brain is ready to learn. When we do not, we are flooded with chemicals of fight, flight, or freeze, and that turns off learning very quickly. So in the beginning of the year, we, as a school, set hopes and dreams. The teachers do this. Anessa does this as part of the lower school team. Anyone involved in the lower school, Shelley and Randall, we set up a hope and dream for the year. What do we want it to look like? What do we want it to feel and be like? When the children arrive, we do the exact same thing with them in all of their classes. And this will be a wide range of things that they're thinking about. Our littlest ones will write things like, I want to learn to read, or I want to learn to go across the monkey bars by myself. One little one wrote one year, I want to learn to birth butterflies. And we did explore the life cycle of butterflies. So she now has an understanding. Our older ones talk about reading more, being a better speller, standing up for others. Those are some of their hopes and dreams. And then as parents, we ask parents to also, on our parent night, which is a few weeks into the school year, to write a hope and dream for your child in this moment in time, not down the road, not what you want them to be doing in high school or where you want them to go to college or what career you want them to have. What do you want for your 6-year-old right now? Because they're only going to be 6 one time. It'll never return again. So what is that hope and dream? And we bring those back out and talk through those in parent-teacher conferences. Are we achieving those? As you can see, this is a precursor to setting goals. And we set goals with students. We show them that goals are statements of things that we want to do and what are those action steps that we want children to take to reach those goals. So if you want to go across the monkey bars by yourself, we've got to practice the monkey bars at recess. And Nessa knows, well, she's on the playground with us a lot, that we do a lot of holding of people to get across the monkey bars before they attempt that on their own. If you want to be a better reader, you have to read more. We have to have those skills in place. In the classrooms as well, at the beginning of the year, the children and the teachers set agreements as to what the year is going to look like. How are they going to interact with each other? These would be classroom rules. And yes, teachers have in mind how we want that to look and lead children to that place of understanding how we work together. In different times when we are able to be together, we also set norms and agreements of how we work as a grade level. And then we also do as a lower school, what are those norms of understanding? These are created by the children. I have always had the pleasure of working with children across all 6 grades to synthesize their classroom agreements into our whole school agreements. And those include things like welcome and respect everyone, be an upstander. Active listening, whole body listening. You'll hear those phrases a lot. Things like have fun. We believe in having fun. Learning is a joyful experience, and hard work and accomplishments make you feel good. So that is a big piece of what we do. Embracing mistakes. A growth mindset is a word you will hear even our youngest talk about. So I walked into a classroom one day and They were having snack, and they were talking about making mistakes, and they shared with me this is what they were talking about. And I'm like, great, I make mistakes all the time. And a little one said, me too, even on Saturday and Sunday. So we embrace mistakes 24/7. And I asked them, I said, well, why is this so important? Why would you be talking about it? And they said, well, your brain grows when you make a mistake. And one little guy said, my brain is growing right now. And I'm like, what are you doing? But we really embrace that for children. It is not a bad thing to make a mistake. The phrase is we respect it and inspect it and learn from it. If you think about the things in your life, what are your greatest moments of learning is when maybe you didn't succeed that first time, or it wasn't an easy success, that you failed and you had to pick yourself back up. So that is a foundational piece of what we do in the lower school. So shift a little bit more to academics, and we really work on these things are integrated. Social emotional learning, diversity, equity, and inclusion is not separate from the academics. It is woven into every aspect of what we do. So what a day will look like in the life of an SK through fourth grader. Every classroom in the lower school starts the day with a morning meeting. This all happens about the same time, shortly after arrival. And the morning meeting is a time to gather together in the community of your classroom, talk about what the day is going to entail, greet each other. We've had to learn non-contact greeting, so we know how no shaking hands or high fives. But it is a part of a life and a part of that welcoming and respectful feeling is like acknowledging each other's presence. We talk about what's on tap for the day, the things that we are learning, and there's usually an academic component. It may be a number game, it may be something they've been talking about in social studies that they do a quick review on to kick their day off. This is a very protected time for all of us, but it does set the tone for us in that day. And in addition, we end the day with what we call a closing circle in our homeroom, again, back in that community space, to talk about the day. What's gone well? What can we improve upon the next day? If it's been a kind of a yucky day, if we've had a rough day, we talk about that and we start over tomorrow. There's nothing we can't overcome if we put our heads together and make that happen. Forgiveness, having grace is a big piece. We still love you, even when you've had a bad day and you've made some decisions that we wish you hadn't. And we as adults do that as well. And we need to share that with children that we do that as well. But looking at the day, you will often hear Randall and Shelley talk about the research that is done at Latin, that we are not a trendy place jumping on the latest and greatest bandwagon in education. We do our research and we do it well. One of those areas that is a highlight for all of us, I believe, is the adoption of Singapore math in the lower grades through middle school. This was about a 5-year study that people that were here did during that time, going to workshops, understanding the process. We did a slow rollout, which is an essential piece of that. Singapore math is really understanding math at its deepest level. We have a wonderful consultant who is considered the Michael Jordan of Singapore math, and he actually laughs at us and says, in Singapore, it is not called Singapore math, it is math. It is good math, it is deep and rich math. If you're like me, you may remember school. I learned to borrow and carry. And that's it. I learned to borrow and carry. I may not have really understood place value and what it would mean. And what would happen if it wasn't a base 10? What if it was a base 7? And those types of things. So our kids do a lot of journaling and writing when you walk into a classroom. And unfortunately, we can't have you do that right now. But what you might see is what looks like a fairly simple problem. And then you listen to the discussion. You see their journal, how they are laying out, how they would go about solving this. What's the reflection that they learned on this? What's their new learning that they have gained through this? It still amazes me to this day to listen to 7, 8, and 9-year-olds talk about math in such a deep, deep way. I often think about what kind of a student would I have been have I had that experience as opposed to just the rote memorization of math facts. Yes, math facts are important and we want our kids to know this because nobody wants a 9th grader counting on their fingers. So that is woven in and we use those in a regular regular routine, but children are talking deeply about math. Their work is used to teach math. They are a part of the lesson, and the teacher facilitates that. We have seen the outcome of that over the last 5 years, the improvement in our kids' deep understanding. We weren't really struggling with math. Math was fine. It was going well. Test scores were good. But we did notice our kids could not talk about math in a deep way, or were very rigid in their thinking. And we do a lot of promoting of flexible thinking, especially in the world we live in. But they were not able to do that. And so that was an area we really wanted to focus on. And today, to listen to them talk is really quite impressive. I have a hard time keeping up with them because they are so deep and rich in their thinking. That extended even down into our lowest of grades with our work with Erickson and their deep understanding of number sense, not just counting, not just reciting the numbers, but really looking at different ways you can create a number. So that is just an example of what we do. So that is what you would see in a math class. We also utilize a workshop model as well in our literacy for reading and writing, based on the workshop model out of Columbia University. And what this looks like in a classroom is they will be focusing on a particular genre, maybe opinion writing, persuasive writing, nonfiction reading and writing, any of those things. And we make sure that those are covered throughout the lower school, that kids have a rich exposure to all genres in reading and writing. So if you walked into a classroom, you would see a teacher doing a mini lesson. This may be skill, this may be content, this may be understanding of the genre, maybe taking a deep dive into comprehension. And then you will see the children go off to practice those skills in their reading at their level, or their writing at their level. And then you will see the teacher move around the room, working in small groups, one-on-one, conferencing, nudging that learning forward. You will not see children all reading the same book. Maybe when you went to school, we all read through those readers that we all were doing the same thing, but you're not going to see that. You might see some book clubs doing that. You might see some kids that are working together on skills. And this enables the teacher to go to that child and nudge them forward in whatever it is they need. So we may be doing writing, and we may have our buddy Mark here, Mark Hoeksteek, who is a beautiful writer. He tells great stories. It's funny, it's entertaining. He paints this great picture. You love his stories, but there's one problem. There's no punctuation. The spelling is so-so. So we're going to work with Mark on pushing those skills forward, letting him edit, showing him that he does have the knowledge to know if something doesn't look quite right. Reread your work. Something we promote all the time. So he's gonna, there he is, he faced it. He faced that he needed to work on his punctuation so that teacher can nudge him forward. And then we have Shelley Greenwood, who just is a beautiful speller. Her punctuation is always in place. Her capital letters are where they need to be. She knows what a proper noun is. She is fantastic with those things, but there's one problem. Her writing's boring. We don't want to read it. It's not very entertaining. It doesn't paint a picture. Most likely, Shelley is afraid to make a mistake. And so we're going to work with her. Shelley would never be afraid to make a mistake. She's risk taker. But we will work with her. She may be, she's only 6, so she's writing about her dog, and she can spell dog. She knows that word. The problem is her dog is a Chihuahua. We don't know that because Shelley's afraid to spell Chihuahua because she knows she doesn't know how to spell it. So we're going to work with her to take that risk, know those sounds that she knows, put those on paper, and now we have a better picture of Shelley's dog. It's a Chihuahua, not a German Shepherd that I thought was in my head. So those are some ways we make learning personal with children. When we talk about personal learning, it is knowing the child and what they can do. It is not personalized in that we have 21 different plans in a classroom. They are all working on writing about a small moment, a narrative writing like their pet. And that choice of their topic is also what makes it personal. So that is one way that we reach out to children and make that learning personal for them. Social studies is woven throughout our curriculum. It's part of our social emotional learning. It is integrated into the reading and writing. Our 4th graders at the end of the year do a huge unit in reading and writing on social justice. and that is a part of your identity, which is a big piece of what we do in the lower school. We utilize for social studies. This was another deep dive we took several years ago. About that time, Illinois updated their standards, typical things you would expect in social studies, geography, history, those kinds of things. But we found that they had added, which was wonderful, financial literacy, which you don't often see, as well as a civic engagement, which was a perfect timing as Latin had just adopted utilizing the teaching tolerance social anti-bias framework or social justice standards. This was JK through 12. We did this. It's one of the things that ties us together. In the social justice standards are 4 domains. The first domain being identity. That is a big piece of what we do in the lower school, and it continues throughout because our identity, while some things are set, we are born into the world we were born into. We were born into the race we were born into. But as we grow and learn, our identity is shaped. So like the social justice unit that our 4th graders do, we really encourage them to find their passion. What is it in the world that they would like to change? For some, that is homelessness. For some, that is the environment. Obviously, the world we are living in has brought, as Shelley said, the race and gender equality, all of those things front and center. It is never too early to start talking about these things. Our littlest ones learn about how did we get our skin color? It is science, and we talk about the science because that is a precursor to being able to discuss race in a way that brings in the social constructs. So identity is a huge piece of what we do. You cannot walk through the lower school without seeing that evidence. The next domain is diversity, and this is where we learn that we are alike and we are different in so many ways. How do we ask questions of things we don't understand in respectful ways? How do we engage in a conversation that I can learn from you, you can learn from me, and that we embrace this? We work a lot with our students on talking stems. This is how to have a conversation, how to disagree with each other, because disagreement is important, and being able to engage in that, having us restorative justice practices. If I say something to Mark and it makes him feel a certain way, I need to listen to how he has felt. He needs to listen to how I have felt around that. And we work with children. As adults, this is an incredibly hard thing to do. And so we do believe in starting it very, very early with our students. The third domain is justice, and that is working with our children on understanding information and factual information. We talk a lot about primary sources and where to get your information. It is about Wikipedia is not your best source, neither is Twitter or other forms of social media, but so where do we get that information? Where are we making educated decisions and not just giving an opinion with nothing behind it? Because the last domain in the social justice standards is action. How do we take action on the knowledge that we have? You can imagine in the lower school during their persuasive writing, I get a lot of information about why we should have more food at snack time and why we should have additional recess time. But they also come in with some very clear things. Some 1st graders last year came in and were concerned about the signs on the bathroom, as they were really prohibitive of gender, and they wanted to talk about it. It was a fascinating conversation to have with 6 and 7-year-olds, and they began designing what they would like to see outside the bathrooms. Then COVID hit, and we have not been able to move forward with those things, but I am hopeful we will pick those pieces up. This is when Anessa and Sarah start smiling at me, which means I'm talking way too long, so I'm going to move quickly here and wrap a few things up. We are so fortunate, Latin, that not only those things that I've shared with you, but we embrace and respect the arts. Our language programs, those start from the earliest grades. Our JKers are in Spanish class a few times a week. By the time they hit 4th grade, they're going almost every day to Spanish. And so those pieces are an integral part. The only thing we are able to do in person right now is PE. Unfortunately, we are having to do everything virtually, as we cannot expose our specialist teachers to a large number of students during this time. But we are hopeful that that day is coming because they are dying to get back with students. We have 2 full-time counselors that host a roundtable in the classroom about once a week. They talk about everything. Sometimes they're talking about what's going on in the world, where we stop and pump those brakes when things happen. And the inauguration right now is a big topic. Our littlest ones watched it yesterday afternoon and really had tons of questions about everything from that big Bible to the songs and the flags and the people why the people were there, who was there, why couldn't they go, those kinds of things. They had tons of questions. So we do believe exposing children in the right way to these things and having that opportunity to talk. Our counselors also run a program where we're talking about relationships and friendships with kids, because this is the critical piece as they begin to really develop healthy relationships and recognize unhealthy relationships. We have a learning resource team. We have a math interventionist, reading interventionist, and 3 learning resource teams. We have children who do have diagnoses here that we support. If we can make that happen, we make that happen. We believe in a diverse group of learners. It makes our horizon much broader. And so those things are in place. If you walk into a classroom, you will see children sitting on flexible seating. You will see children using an iPad for certain things, others not. It really is where we can meet those needs the best that we can and have a child successful at Latin. I could go on and on and on and on about lower school, but they're all smiling at me, which means I have well overextended my time. And I know we want to get to some Q&A. So Anessa, I'm going to send this back to you so we can move forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Julie. That was a wonderful overview, but we do have a lot of questions coming in, so I'm going to fire away at you. Will you go into a little more detail about the science program and particularly how STEM is integrated into science and what that looks like?
Sure, that's where I ran out of time. So we have a science lab. We have a create lab, which is our computer science and integration, run by our computer science and integration specialist. So children go to the science lab beginning in SK. Science is done in the classroom for JK. So they go a few times a week. We have 2 science teachers, and that is a very, very important part of our work. The science teachers also work closely with the homeroom teachers to find ways to integrate science. Science is not a standalone. It is a part of everything in our world. We can use those features of science and how do we predict and hypothesize around things. That is used in the classroom. We do that with math. We do that with what do we think is going to happen in a book. Those types of things. The computer science and technology is integrated. The kids do go to went to the Create Lab once a week, but our specialist in that area came from a homeroom setting. She was a first grade teacher for a long time, so she has that fabulous balance of what it's like in a homeroom and then what it is like to be a special teacher. So she works very, very closely with the homeroom teachers to create things in the classroom that directly connect to computer science and reading and writing. It is all really woven together. It is difficult to break those pieces apart because they are integrated. We use the computer science in. If you go into our Create Lab, you will see everything, just like you would expect. You would see computers, you'd see a green screen. You also see sewing machines, 3D printers. So we run the gamut of creation and making. And it really is about developing those skills of open-mindedness and flexible thinking. How do I do this? How can I do this in a different way to make it work? And that really is a life skill that all of us need, because the chance of your children having careers that we know about right now is minimal. Those careers will be developed long after we are all, our children are adults and we are all hopefully happily retired somewhere and having successful children out in the world. That is going to be developed over time. So.
You okay? Drink of water. These are, again, more logistical questions. So one, can you talk about the start of the day, the end of the day, about how long lunch is? And then we also have questions around kind of extended day, after school resource, enrichment opportunities. So kind of logistics.
Great. So children begin arriving at 7:55. Then they go in these times, they go straight to the classroom. Class starts at 8:15. Usually those first 10 minutes are taking attendance and getting everybody situated. The children have something to work on or do when they come in, and that varies by grade. Morning meeting starts at 8:30. That's usually about 20 minutes. And then we move into our day, and everyone looks different because our fourth graders go to a specials right at 9 o'clock. Our first graders have a big chunk of time in the morning for a workshop or math. Teachers develop those schedules in accordance. Reading, writing, math, all are about an hour each. Social studies is about 45 minutes. Lunch is 30 minutes. We have a snack in the morning typically, but we keep food on hand. Hungry bodies do not create learning brains. So we often have a fruit bowl. Teachers can grab more snacks during the day. We keep sun butter and jelly sandwiches around. And then for SK, our dismissal time is 2:30. First and second is 3 o'clock. Right now, third and fourth is 2:50, but that is a scheduling challenge that we have during these times. Normally, third and fourth go to 3:15. Clearly, we stagger 385 students are being in a city street. There is a courtesy room. So if you have an SKer and a fourth grader, that SKer can stay with a group of children and a teacher until their fourth grade sibling has been dismissed, so that you're doing one pickup, that you don't have to drive endlessly around the block. We also have extended day. They can go into extended day immediately following their dismissal. That is run by a separate staff, but a group that works very closely with us. They are all trained in responsive classroom. A lot of the things that we do, we continue, but we create that environment of relaxation. They have put in a full day of work. So we want a lot of playtime, a lot of physical time. We do have what's called after school programs, resources, and we do not have that right now due to the pandemic. We are hopeful to get that going as soon as it is safe, and that is everything that begins in first grade. That is everything from chess to knitting to yoga to robotics to the Lego Mania, Harry Potter Club. It really is a creative thing. If you come up with an idea, we're going to run with it. We have dance, we have drama, we have music, all different sorts of things for children to tap into. We also hope this makes your life a little bit easier, that you are not having to run all over Chicago going to kids yoga and tap and ballet or something like that, that you can get a lot of those pieces right here on campus.
Sorry, Julie, that was great. Responding back to a lot of questions. We've got a lot going on here. Okay, so we talked about after school resource and extracurricular Rising Romans. Can you talk a little bit about how you share and articulate student progress throughout the year?
Yes, we can. So this year we implemented for the first time, and it was really done because of COVID, but the teachers have come back and said, this has been such a great thing. We actually reach out to you before the school year starts, or in those very, very early days, just to get to know you and make that clearly in the time of COVID, we wanted the children to see us without a mask. And so that was the catalyst for starting this, but it's kind of like a little intake conference. You are telling us about your child and your family. And teachers have said it was such a wonderful thing. I've seen this done in other schools, done it personally, and it is. So I think that is something we will be implementing. Then teachers usually give a phone call home, I'm going to say in the first month of school, just to touch base. Here's what we're seeing in that first month of school. And this is where things are headed, and can be everything that we're working on our scissors skill to, I noticed that, Shelley is not turning in a reading log regularly, so maybe she needs to be reading a little bit more. So we really encourage you to do that 20 minutes of reading every night. Maybe she still needs you reading to her, even though she's in the third grade. Those kinds of things, like how do we partner together? And then end of October, we send home a grade report. It is a short checklist of just how this beginning of school has materialized for all of us. And then parent-teacher conferences take place school-wide the first week of November, or the first or second week of November. This year they've been on Zoom. Usually they're in person. Again, we're learning a lot about this world and what we can do in it. We are actually right now writing everything down for our March release as to a grade report that you will get in writing, followed by a parent-teacher conference, so that you have the grade report in your hand. You can formulate questions. We have a starting point to talk from when you come in for conferences. And then we do a robust report in June as your child is exiting that grade. Those are the big points in the year. Communication around here is nonstop. We operate on the idea of no surprises. Nothing should come as a surprise when you get a grade report or come into a conference. Teachers are very quick to let you know something's going on, let you know we've had a great day. We want to celebrate those successes. Oftentimes as adults, we operate on fixing something, but we really want to note when children have moved ahead. That's the kind of the joy of my job. I see what they look like in JK, and then I see what they look like in SK and go, oh my goodness, so much growth has happened. And it's such an exciting thing to see. So it is a constant communication with families, what is going on. We believe in partnership. There's no way to do this unless we are working together.
Absolutely. Homework and lower school policy regarding homework at Latin.
Homework does not begin until the 4th grade, formalized homework. We made this change several years ago, and again, ton of research. And as you probably know, you can find all kinds of things on homework, supporting it, negating it, those types of things. What we have found, there was fear that our kiddos would not be ready for middle school. What we're finding is they are actually more ready to handle that because we have not started things too soon. We live in a world where things have been moved down. If you're like me, my kindergarten looks nothing like kindergarten of today. And so we need to be very cognizant. That doesn't mean we don't want you doing anything at home. We are very clear with the children, with you must be reading daily. Every single day. And that may be reading to your child. Again, I don't care how old they are. That may be reading as a family together. That may be your child reading to you, to grandparents, younger siblings, the dog, the cat, the goldfish. We don't care. We want them reading because the more they read, the better readers. We give you lots of ideas, lots of places for resources on our website for children to go jump on and do science. Our specials teachers put a lot of things on that they can do science experiments at home. They can do some of their Spanish games at home. Those things are there, but they are not required until we hit 4th grade. 2nd, 3rd, do a lot more of monitoring the reading that's going on at home and making sure that is happening as well. And again, we don't care where you're reading. You read in the car. If your child doesn't get car sick, then you can read in the car, those kinds of things. But we really have found that our children are prepared and ready. There will be times that we do special projects. Our 1st grade does a beautiful project around family community and the communities you live in. This is a big piece of our identity work, where your name comes from, family history is, and it's so fascinating the things that we learn about our families and pictures of you when you're young children, those types of things that we bring in to our community. So there's still involvement. It just does not look like the Monday through Friday homework that we are used to seeing.
Wonderful. Thank you, Julie. I just want to address, we are getting a plethora of questions and we are doing our best to filter them to Julie as well as to respond to you. I do want to reiterate, as Mr. Cooksake said in our intro, that so much of this information is on our website, especially the logistics, more information around the specials and what it looks like in junior kindergarten, senior kindergarten versus grade 3, the curriculum maps. And again, I will pop my email into there again at the end, as well as my phone number. I'm happy to be a resource to any of you. But Julie, another question I'd like you to address is, how are parents involved at Latin, and how do you see their greatest contributions through their involvement?
Oh my goodness, this could be a whole nother info session. So obviously right now things are really different. And it feels, I think the hardest day for many reasons was our very first day of school, because on that first day of school, every single lower school parent, even if your child has been here for 6 years and is going into the 4th grade, they may not be as thrilled about it as the little ones are. we ask you to come in with your child. We want you in our hallways. We want to see you on that first day. We want to celebrate the beginning of school. Clearly that did not happen. And that was a sad day. We were so excited to see the children, but there was a very big missing component, because the funniest thing that happens on those days is seeing parents who have now spent the summer with their children, especially in quarantine, literally skipping down the street and enjoy freedom as they run off to grab a cup of coffee before they headed to their world. So that was a rough day for parents and children. Actually, the kids handled it a lot better than the adults did. We were the ones that were sad. So that we hope will be back sooner rather than later. We have a very active parent association, very active. We do not hurt for anything. During these COVID times, they have been known to drop off all kinds of treats for us. We got the greatest gifts in the mail. I mean, it has just been overwhelming. So Parent Association is a great resource for that. In the lower school specifically, we used to, we had a book fair in person, which is always fun. We all remember the book fair. So we have a team there that hosts that. We have, it's also, the first one is always on Parent Teacher Conference Day. And these great volunteers then created an opportunity that if you don't have childcare that day and you need to get to your parent teacher conference, we have activities going on, and your child can go be with some other families and moms and kids and play for 30 minutes while you go do your parent teacher conference. So they have come up with a host of ways to work in that. In normal times, we have Romans Run in the Park, and I so hope this comes back next year. Our little ones, JK through 4, get to do a race. Everybody wins, just so you know. There's longer races for the bigger kids and parents that want to join in, but it is just good old-fashioned fun in the park. And we have a huge team of parents and our development team that make that happen. We have Girls on the Run. We've had some volunteers from that come into play. There are so many things and so many ways. And what amazes me about Latin is at the end of the year, they bring their volunteer base together. Most schools you go to, the volunteer base is dropped off dramatically by May. But I've walked in every year and I'm like, there are 100 people in this room, and that's just lower school. So there are so many ways to be involved, and it's things like the book fair and Romans Run that really make the community special, but don't put the burden on the teachers to make those things happen. The families want to keep that off teachers and let teachers come with their families to enjoy things like this. And so I think that is sometimes the greatest contribution, but I will tell you the greatest contribution is supporting the teachers and all of the things that we do here at Latin. Disagreement is fine. Healthy disagreement we grow and learn from. Getting a note from someone saying what a great job you have done, and I cannot believe how you've handled this pandemic, because most days I feel like, oh my goodness, every day feels like such a steep learning curve and I'm making a lot of mistakes. I've said I'm sorry and I don't know more than the past year than ever, and I think in my lifetime. But when I get that email from a parent that says, I just want to leave you with a happy note on a Friday because I don't know, but I do know that you have done a lot. That's everything. Right there is everything. There is not a single person in this school that is not working extremely long hours in the best of times. And so acknowledging that and helping us grow and learn in the right ways is, I would say, the greatest contribution.
Thank you, Julie. That was beautiful. And so true, especially today. Can you talk a little bit about academic diversity, what that looks like, and how we address all the unique character traits in these special children that come to visit us?
Great. I always find it interesting that academic diversity is a term, and I understand the term, but I've always, parents often will ask, like, what is a normal third grader? And I'm like, don't know, because if I send everybody on the screen to third grade to go find the normal third grader, they'd all come back with a different child, because that diversity is what makes learning work. We know in our classrooms. There's going to be that kid that reads like crazy, and we have to challenge them in certain ways. We know we have that artist in the room. We know right now I'm sitting down talking to you, but I have a standing desk. There's a reason for that. And I would love to tell you it's because it's healthy for me, but it's because I wiggle too much. And some of these people on the screen can tell you sitting with me in a meeting is like, it's like sitting with a 5-year-old. I need to move. And so we get that. You'll walk into a classroom, you will see children at a standing desk. You will see children with headphones on during portions of the day, because some of it may be noise blocking. You will see children using color-coded materials to mark their reading because it helps the tracking for them. You will see children using having access to all different hands-on materials, because for Sarah, it might be Unifix cubes that helps her. For me, it might be the base 10 blocks that I need that makes sense to me. And we are looking for those things all the time. With children, we often, depending on if we're dealing with something like working memory is a struggle for them, we'll front load the family with the vocabulary for the upcoming social studies or science unit. You have that vocabulary at home, so you can weave it into the course of your conversations with your children. They have access to that before it's introduced in class, so that they can go into class and feel comfortable and ready to engage in that learning. We have children who attend learning resources that go at certain times. We have the learning resource team that pushes into the classroom and works with groups of children. Sometimes they're specifically there for a child, but they'll grab a couple more that we know could use some extra time and attention and make that happen. So again, this could be a whole nother info session on academic diversity, because we don't view academic diversity as this other thing. Academic diversity is part of our world. We are all a diverse people, and that includes our learning. I am a hands-on learner. Even at my ripe old age here, I still learn best hands-on. If you lecture me, I'm not going to remember. I had to audio record back in the good old days in college lecture classes, because and write it down. That's how I learn. That doesn't change for any of us. And we learn to accommodate, and we teach kids, like, you need this toolbox. And that's what we're really looking for in lower schools, having them go out with a learning toolbox, that they know their learning style. They know they might need to stand up in the back of a lecture class. They might need to put their headphones on when the other kids are talking, those kinds of things. So again, much longer, deeper conversation, because it is part of our world. It is not a separate entity.
Thank you, Julie. That's great. I do want to be respectful of everyone's time. I've got one more question before I hand it back over to Mark, and that is, will you talk about a little more deeply about civic engagement and community service and what that looks like in the lower school?
Sure. Right now, not as much as we would like. We have some partners in the area. Cradles to Crayons is one of our partners. We typically do backpacks. We do all kinds of gathering of materials for them. Our older kids, 3rd and 4th, actually go and sort the materials at Cradles to Crayons. Again, this year we have not done so. We really love that hands-on piece for them. We have a buddy program that we are buddied throughout the entire school. So our JK is buddied with our seniors, our SKers with our 11th graders, and so on. They oftentimes work on projects. That may be writing letters. We just did some packaging of homeless materials for homeless people, book drives, all sorts of things like that. The kids are very good at bringing in information about things they want to do, and we encourage that. That is part of their identity and what's meaningful to them. So we do a lot of that type of encouraging. We had, I'm not sure if I have a book laying right here, by Jakeel Neem. He's been to our school. He started a program, I Am program, when he was like 10 years old, 8 years old, something like that. He came to an assembly last year and spoke to our kids about they could make a difference. He was a 13-year-old. He had them captivated, much more so than I can do. And they really listened to, this kid did this. If this kid can do it, so can I. So really empowering them to come up with those things. We've actually even turned our Valentine's party. It's about love. So we should be giving that love forward. We are very fortunate here at Latin. So our teachers have woven in, yes, we still give Valentine's cards and all those fun things, but they do a service project, and depending on the age, it is about giving back to our community in some form, some way. we are again looking very forward to the day when we can make that a very active part of our school and that civic engagement. We don't shy away from the things that we talk about, but we talk about things in developmentally appropriate language and terms for our children to be able to grasp. You know, I want the children in SK to remember the inauguration yesterday. I want them to remember, regardless of beliefs, it was historic. And I want them to remember, oh yeah, I was sitting in my kindergarten class when I saw this, because I remember those things as well. So again, it is so woven into what we are doing, and we probably have yet another. I think I just racked up about 4 more info sessions on different things that we could talk about. So again, it's an integral part of what we do. We are very blessed at Latin, and we want to make sure we are paying it forward.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Julie. I think we got through a number of questions. If we did not, we have note of everyone's questions. We will be reaching out to you personally, and or please feel free to reach out to us. I will add my contact information one more time while Mr. Kupsik is giving his closing statements. But thank you again to Shelley and Julie for being here. We really appreciate it.
Great. Thanks, Anessa. A huge thank you to Julie for that amazing session and sharing all of that information about the lower school with us this morning. Also, big thanks to Shelley for joining us this morning. It was great to have you here with us as well. So as Anessa said, a reminder to please check our website where you'll find all of the information about Latin's lower school. We also have a photo gallery up there of the lower school spaces. So unfortunately, we can't show you the building right now, but at least you'll be able to see what it looks like. The other thing as well I would say is we weren't able to get to all of the questions. There were a huge amount this morning. Anessa's dropped her email into the chat. So if you do want to reach out to her with your question, you can do that. You can also ask any questions that you have if you're invited in for a parent conference this spring. I was asked just to say a few words, a little bit more about the process. So the deadline to apply for SK-4 is April 9th. As I suggested at the start, don't wait until April 9th to submit your applications. It's really helpful to us to have a sense of interest in advance of that date. We do our re-enrollment in February, but our contracts then become binding mid-April. So at any time between February and April, you may be invited in for a parent conference and a child assessment as well. So the sooner that we have your application materials, the better. If you have any further questions about the application process, please feel free to reach out to Anessa, who oversees that on behalf of our lower school. So thank you so much again for taking the time to be with us this morning and for all of your amazing questions. We hope you've learned a lot more about Latin's lower school and the application process. As a team, we really look forward to getting to know you and your families over the coming months. We'd like to thank you and wish you a great day.